There's little else to say about the ridiculous development cycle for the artist formerly known as Final Fantasy Versus 13 that hasn't already been said a million times over. While it hasn't quite reached the status of Duke Nukem Forever, it's rapidly approaching that level. However, last year at E3, Square Enix broke its stingy stance on withholding information and unleashed a tidal wave of new footage and details and dropped one giant E3-sized megaton that left most of us smiling. Michael Damiani offers up his insight into what Square Enix should do with Final Fantasy 15. It's hard to say at this point whether there's any realistic chance Final Fantasy 15 can live up to expectations, but last year's reintroduction certainly sparked our hopes. However, the window of opportunity for Square Enix to capitalize on the little good faith they have left is rapidly closing, so if we don't get this game soon, there may be no hope at all of salvaging one of the most absurd development cycles of all time. One thing director Tetsuya Nomura and his team can do is study more recent Japanese RPGs that have struck a positive chord with audiences. One such example is Xenoblade Chronicles, a game that ironically felt like it had a lot in common with another Square Enix RPG, Final Fantasy XII. The open world nature, the party dynamics, and the emphasis on quest-driven gameplay were a stark contrast to the more linear progression and heavy-handed narrative found in Final Fantasy XIII. Xenoblade earned nearly unanimous acclaim from critics and fans, whereas Final Fantasy XIII is regarded as one of the worst games in the franchise. Looking back at the past wouldn't hurt either. Final Fantasy XII made some bold strides for the series, but the last few entries, starring Lightning, highlight almost everything that's gone wrong with Square Enix, and how out of touch they are with even their own fans and everyone else in general. It's time to bring back what made Final Fantasy so great. The sense of wonder that came from exploring a vast overworld like we did in the NES and SNES Final Fantasy classics needs to come back. Being able to go your own way at certain junctures, like splitting up the party in Final Fantasy VI, offered up a choice that felt like it had some impact on the experience. And what about all those wonderful mini-games we enjoyed in Final Fantasy VII? It's possible Final Fantasy 15 will have all this and more, but recent history has dampened our hopes.
You convinced me of that. So stay strong.
What we've seen so far, the combat system looks very impressive, but there still hasn't been a playable demo. Final Fantasy XV's battle system can't simply be a Kingdom Hearts clone. It needs to be something more. Something fast-paced that feels closer to a character action game like Devil May Cry, but doesn't completely abandon its RPG roots. We want to work in tandem with party members, and we want to have as much control over their actions and behaviors as possible, too. Finally, we have high hopes for the real-time weapon switching we've seen in the gameplay footage. Perhaps Noctis will completely change skill sets when equipping a new weapon. Some sort of job-changing mechanic that puts a broad range of actions at your disposal. Mix this in with coordinating with your party members and dealing with the environment around you, and there's a lot of potential here for strategy buffs that thrive on multiple solutions rather than a single, most effective course of action. Given everything we saw last year, it's hard to fathom Square Enix leaving us in the dark at E3. However, the Japanese developer has been relatively quiet about new details for the past year. Is it possible we might not see anything of Final Fantasy 15 at E3 2014? A playable demo might be out of the question, but hopefully we at least get a new trailer. Otherwise, fans might be in for another long and agonizing wait for the next morsel of information.